Happy Friday. This is Angela Hooper Menifield of Menifield Associates with your HR moments for Friday, May 15th, 2020. If you've been following me today, you can see I've been very busy on social media. But it's always good to check in. I do my Monday, Wednesday, Friday Facebook Lives. I know some of the people and some of the groups that I'm in are looking to start getting a bigger presence on social media. And so hopefully just even seeing the consistency. Hey, Linda, I just love you. I just can't wait to see you, to give you a hug, because trying to do this some days is easier than others. And just knowing that at least one person is checking in kind of keeps you motivated. And then, of course, sometimes it's the comments or the shares afterwards. But when you're in this space and doing it, it is definitely encouraging. So thanks so much. So let's get right to it. Today's topic, I didn't ask a question. It came out as a command, right? I said, stop jumping to conclusions. Please stop. You know, in life, it's just really easy to jump to conclusions and interpret things in a way that may or may not be as accurate as what we interpret it. But there's very little good comes out of jumping to conclusion, because even if we start with the word jump, what does that tell you, right? Like, we took a leap. So we leaped to something that may or may not be accurate. And by doing so, we've basically put ourselves in a situation. I forgot to turn on my watch party, but we put ourselves in a situation that we don't allow time to step back and figure out what's really going on, what we need to do, and how we need to do it. And so that's the reason why I say stop jumping to conclusions. So one of the things I'd like to talk about first is, though, what are some of the reasons that we do even jump to conclusions, right? Because it's not that it just happens instinctively. There's some common mistakes or distortions that play a big role in why we jump to conclusions. Well, one of them is catastrophizing, right? And we think of the word catastrophe. So when we talk about catastrophizing, what we're saying is, we make mountains out of molehills. So something could be minor, not that it's insignificant, but it's clearly not at the level, or needs to be risen to the level that that we have taken it to. And as a result of such, we turn a mountain into a molehill. So that's one of the reasons why people jump to conclusions. Another reason why people jump to conclusions is they overgeneralize. So basically, we make general conclusions based on a single event or a piece of evidence. So theoretically, a work example, and this is one that I've used repeatedly because it really happened. Someone at work does not speak to you. So then you overgeneralize and say, Angela doesn't like me. Then to take it to another step, right? Let's just say theoretically the person who I didn't speak to was a man. And then the conversation becomes not only that Angela doesn't like me, but it's that Angela doesn't like me because I'm a man. She only speaks to women in the organization. Or, it could be a race issue, right? This is how these kinds of things can happen sometimes. Now, let me be really clear, because I don't want you guys inboxing me or accusing me of not being sensitive to some of the real issues that happen in the workplace. I do know there are some people who have issues with us for things out of our control. For instance, I actually had a client one time when I worked for the government that was like, I'm not talking to that girl. And he called me a Yankee and all kind of other things because he put me in a box and decided he didn't want to deal with me. Now, that's not correct behavior, and I'm not suggesting it is. But for me, I didn't jump to that conclusion until he said that, right? So in other words, I let the facts dictate why he didn't speak to me. Then there's this, we want to put everything in a dichotomy. It's either black or white. There's no either or, right or wrong. There's no gray. And so these are some of the other things. So if it's not A, then it must be B. like there are no other alternatives. So that's another way we jump to conclusions. And then there's this fairness fallacy, right? So we create in our mind this vision or this perception that we know what's fair. And that's not fair. You know, I hear people say all the time, that's not fair. And I'm not speaking about equity or legalities. I'm talking about fair as it pertains to, well, when she asked you, could she leave early? You said yes, and that's not fair. So you must not like me because I'm fill in the blank, right? That is me jumping into conclusions. So we've talked a little bit about the why people jump to conclusions. Now let's talk about how we can stop. Let's just stop it. You know, one of my favorite sayings, and I have to give credit where credit is due, and I'm not suggesting that he coined it, but he used it enough that it resonated with me and made me think, did I do this? And it was assign noble intent. Noble intent. What does that mean? That means that basically I say, I'm going to give this person the benefit of the doubt. So even when and if they say or do something that offends me, something that appears to be one way, because I don't know if it is or isn't, but what I will do is assign noble intent. So I will give them the benefit of the doubt. I will assume that whatever decisions they are making, even if they're making decisions that I don't really care about or I don't like, I'm going to assume their intent is still for it to be for my good. Now, again, I'm not naive. I promise you I'm not. I'm in my 50s, right? So I've been around for a minute. I know there are some people who do intentionally look to harm, disparage, and degrade people. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I still never approach any relationship with that as a possibility. You are going to have to prove to me that that's who you are. And me being me, I'm going to ask you some questions to get some clarity on your behavior. So I assign noble intent. Linda says water cooler conversations at work sometimes start these assumptions. Yes, Linda, you are so on point. So funny, I had this conversation today with someone and they were really upset with their coworkers. And some of the confusion was about whether or not people had let the customers believe that they no longer work there. And they were really upset about it. And I just listened and, I'm sympathetic, I'm empathetic. I know people need to vent and discuss things. But a question I asked was, is it possible that because when you weren't at work for an extended period of time and it was for medical reasons, and maybe they were following some of the guidelines that I've been giving them about not discussing medical information, that when the general public asked where you were, all they said was, she's not at work right now. And if that's what they did, then is it possible that the people made an assumption because they couldn't give any more details or discuss it? And as a result of that, they jumped to conclusions and thought you weren't there for reasons to suggest you weren't coming back, when it was just merely your coworkers trying to give limited facts to protect your privacy. And the moment I said that, I could just tell like a light bulb clicked for her. Now, I don't know why the people did what they did. Let's be really clear. But it's just my nature to think that, is there another reason? Is there something else plausible that could be the why behind what this is? And it was clear that that was a very plausible alternative. So at least at that point, I got to thinking, right? So the other thing is take a deep breath. In marriages and situations with our kids and significant others and things like that, guess what? We do that too, right? And so as a parent, we walk in the room and maybe we told our kids to clean the room or clean the dishes, and we come home from work and the dishes aren't clean. And we slam our things down and we start huffing and puffing and we're like, I know I told you to wash those dishes or whatever that is. We didn't even say, hey, I just wanted to check on you. Is everything okay? Maybe the kid came home with a migraine. Maybe something else happened. I mean, like, we really don't know, but we immediately jump to the conclusion. And God forbid we be on the phone with someone else, or somebody else is there to co-sign it. It's real easy for us to say stuff like, I can't believe this, so-and-so or this child disobeyed me and didn't do da-da-da-da. So now that's a conclusion. They disobeyed you. Did they really disobey you? Could they have forgotten? I mean, again, I know the conclusion is the end result is the same. And that end result is that the dishes weren't done. But we have jumped to the conclusion that this was willful and intentional. And I think that's the part of it that we have to really focus our efforts on, because that's what causes confusion, anxiety, distrust, and harms our relationships, right? Because it's one thing for you not to speak to me. It's another thing for me to jump to the conclusion that you did it on purpose, right? So don't jump to conclusions. Give people the benefit of the doubt. So if I see you and you don't speak to me, I'm going to say, you probably didn't see me. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, right? Because guess what? What do I lose by giving you the benefit of the doubt? What harm has been caused to me by giving you the benefit of the doubt? On the flip side, we can talk about the harm that could be caused if I jump to the conclusion, right? And like I said, I could go a whole lot of ways with this, right? Because I've seen people in relationships jump to conclusions that somebody was flirting. They weren't flirting. Somebody asked them a question, right? So just ask yourself, why did I decide that was the version of the story I wanted to go with? Linda said we often jump to conclusions with family more often than we should. Yes, Linda, I have been guilty of that. I have really had to grow up in that area. But again, as we get older, we do better. And there's a saying that says, when you know better, you do better. And one of the things I've really tried to do, even with my daughter, is to help her not to jump to conclusions. So one of the things I really like about her is when she feels like she's going to, she'll at least call me and say, hey, Mom, can I talk to you about something? And then we'll talk through it. Because here's what we also know, and this comes with that knowledge of behavioral assessments, right? We're wired differently. So while one person may be more emotional about a subject, when you know that's you, think about the friend that you have or that coworker you have that tends to be more logical, right? Because everybody has one in their inner circle, like the one that sees the good in everybody, right? So if you're the conspiracy theorist in the group, go to the friend that gives everybody the benefit of the doubt and listen to their take on the subject. Again, I'm not saying you're right or wrong. What I'm saying is just having that extra conversation could potentially avoid you from jumping to conclusions. It's just, like I said, it's real easy to do. It's real easy to do. And especially if there's been any situations where there's been a lack of trust or respect displayed and people have residual effects from that, it's easy to do. So as we get ready to conclude, because we're at the 13-minute mark and I really try to keep these videos between 10 to 15 minutes, I just want to say, stop it. And you know who you are. You know if you're the person in the group that always runs with something, like you grabbing that bone and you running with it. As my mama used to say, if a dog would bring a bone, he'll take a bone, right? And what that meant was if they'll bring you some of that stuff, they're gonna take some back to other places. And there's some people that are just notorious for this. So ask yourself, is it possible that one of the reasons why you find yourself jumping to a conclusion is because you are associating yourself with people who do that as well? People who always see a conspiracy, people who always think people are up to no good, people who always think there's an ulterior motive, right? If that's the inner circle that you're running in, again, I'm not telling you to let go of your friends and family, but what I am suggesting is that you invite different perspectives into your inner circle, because as a result of doing that, you might find that your lens has been a little tainted, right? And unaware, it's like you didn't even see that you were drifting. So that would be the last bit of advice I would give you. But please, please, I beg you, stop jumping to conclusions. It serves you no good, and it puts you at risk of destroying some relationships. Again, have a great weekend. We appreciate you. Take care, and until Monday, we'll talk to you soon. But again, HR Moment, Monday afternoon, and I'll start posting ahead of time what time I'm going live, because I know some people do try to catch them. And Linda, again, I always appreciate you. So thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Bye.